good morning. So I'm going to be showing you guys how to begin and build up your coil baskets. So each and every one of you are going to be receiving coiling cord. Coiling cord is this white cord that I'm going to be passing out to you. On one end, we are going to start the project, and on the other end, I'm going to ask that you put a piece of tape and your name and your period. So in case it goes missing, we can get it back to you because these do take quite some time to knock out. So you're gonna notice that the end of this cord is kind of flat. We kind of need this tapered at an angle. So I have my scissors here and I'm going to cut it at an angle. Okay, like that. And so as you see, it's now at a peak, right? Okay, okay. So I have my coiling cord and it's already ready to begin starting the eyeball of my project. There are 3 steps to this project. One is building your eyeball, one is building the base of your project, which is the flat part, and then one is building the walls of your project. You are going to need a piece of yarn. I would advise to do 3 arm lengths. So 1, 2, hopefully I can get 3. It's kind of tangled, so how about 2.5? Okay. So I have 2.5 arm lengths. Okay. And you're going to need a tapestry needle. So I do not want you to be afraid of these tapestry needles. Yes, it is a needle. However, they are not hard. They are not rough. They will not penetrate the skin. They are kind of soft at the end. So I'll show you a little bit. You see how they're kind of rounded a bit? So they should not harm or hurt you. So yeah, and they have a big eyeball so you can get your piece of string in there. So I have my piece of yarn. The way we want to get this in the needle is you kind of want to pinch it somewhere along the edge. I personally like to twist it between my fingers, kind of makes it a little harder. And then once I've kind of twisted it up a bit, I just slide that needle over it back and forth, kind of just wiggle it around, and magically it goes through. So I pull it through and I leave it overlap so I don't lose it. Okay, I'll show you one more time. I get my piece of yarn, I kind of pinch it somewhere. Okay, I'm gonna try to show you this without closing my hands. I kind of just rub it together so it gets kind of tense on top. Oh, that's smart. And then I just place it over the eyeball and I kind of just rub it back and forth. And it goes right through. Okay, it does take a little practice, but you will get it. So I have my tapestry needle on one side, which I do not want to lose. So if I have my needle on the blue side, I'm going to start with the yellow side. So I'm going to teach you now how to start the eyeball of your project. The eyeball of your project is the center base in order to start your coil basket. Okay, so I have my eye. What I'm doing is I'm going to be laying the cord or the yarn against the coiling cord as if I'm extending it into one piece. And with my finger, I'm going to be pinching it and I'm going to be wrapping the yarn over itself to lock it into place. As you can see, when I'm doing this, I'm not leaving any of the white coiling cord exposed. I'm just kind of wrapping it, and I'm going to wrap about 1 inch to 1/2 inch. So 1/2 inch to 1 inch in length. You're also going to notice that this tail is just kind of sticking out. Once I cover it up, it's locked into place, so I won't be needing to tie it off or anything like that. I don't need to tie one string to the next string. I just kind of lock it in. So now that I have about 1 inch of it covered, what I'm going to do is use my fingers and I'm going to bend this coiling cord just to make a small little loop. And that's the reason I tapered off. I'll move that. That's the reason I kind of cut it at that angle there, so it will lay against the coiling cord, and I'm going to line up the edges of my yarn. So using a second needle, you can kind of see this creates a straight line right here from where the yarn I started to the yarn that I ended. And I'm going to continue wrapping both of these cords together. Not only the cord that's the long one, but I'm going to eventually cover up the one that I cut. So I'm going to wrap, and as you can see, hopefully, I'm doing this as tight as I possibly can because I don't want it to slip. I don't want anything to be exposed. I want my basket to look bomb. So I'm doing a single layer, but I'm doing it very, very tightly. So now I kind of have this like fisheye looking thing. All right, This is the beginning part, the eyeball of your project. So I've officially covered up the beginning of the coiling cord, that tapered off part, and I've just kind of continued on one piece. So now what I'm going to do is with my fingers again, I'm going to roll that coiling cord onto its side. So you see how I turn this angle? I rolled this coiling cord so it's the eyeball of the project, so it's laying against my coiling cord. All right. Now is kind of a trickier part. Okay, so I'm holding the yarn tight. I've laid it against the project. As you can see, my yarn is going around my project this direction. I want to continue the direction of my project. Now is the part where we grab our tapestry needle, and I'm going to stab through that eyeball that I made of my project. So that center part of my eyeball, I'm going to stab right through it and pull my piece of yarn all the way through. Okay. And I want that to be the next one, so I'm going to make sure it lays exactly where I want it. I'm going to pull it as tight as I can because it's going to start to curl my project so I can eventually make that whole bottom part of the basket. So I'm going to pull it really, really tight. Okay. Whoop. Pull it really tight. Okay. Now is the part of the project where you get to choose a number. You get to choose between 5, 6, or 7. I'm going to choose 7 because I'm lazier. The higher the number you choose, the tighter you need to do your project. So if you are not doing a good job at keeping your project tight, stick more with the 5s. If you're doing a good job at keeping your project tight, you could stick with a higher number. I am going to ask that you do not exceed 7 because we do not want your basket loose and falling apart because it kind of defeats the purpose of a basket. So around the naked coiling cord, I'm going to wrap it my 7 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. My number 7, I cannot go anymore. So I'm going to lay it against my project. So instead of doing an 8th roundabout, I'm going to be doing, like my 8th one is where I stab through and I pull my yarn. I stab through, I pull the yarn, and this is going to lay my coiling cord against my project, creating that spiral. So I want it to be the next one, and I want to pull it really tight. I want to pull it really tight, and I want to begin again. So there's kind of 3 steps here. Step number 1 is to wrap your coiling cord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Step number 2 is to lay that straight part against your project. And step number 3 is to stab it through. Please keep the direction you're stabbing consistent. Don't keep changing it up because then you're going to have crisscross and your stitches are not going to come out consistently. All right, so one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Step 2 is I lay it against my project, lay it against my project. And step 3, I'm going to stab through the center. So I hope you're starting to get the hang of this. It is super easy. The hardest part of your whole project is to start the eyeball, which we've already done. I'm going to keep going here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Lay it against my project. And as you can see now, I'm starting to get to a point in which, so this is really going to be the last one. I'm going to stab through the center, and I'll show you why in a second. I'll make sure it's the next one. Okay, and I pull. So I'm going to wrap again. My number 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, step 1, wrap it 7 times. Step 2, lay it against my project. And as you can see, my hole, or the eyeball, is way over here. What I'm going to be doing is I want to only stitch together the cord I'm working on to the cord closest to it. So what I mean by that is, instead of always going through the center hole here, the cord that I'm working on, if I lay it against the next cord, this would be the area that I would want to hook it to. I only want to hook it to the cord in front of it. Okay? Hopefully you could see where I'm stabbing. I will explain this again because it's like, what? I just got this and now you're making it confusing. Okay. Again, pull tight. Okay. So I'm going to wrap it. Step 1 is to wrap 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Step 2 is to lay it against my project, so lay it down. And step 3 is whatever row I'm working on, so this is half covered, half not covered, I only want to hook it to the coiling cord in front of it, not always the center hole. So I'm hooking here. My center hole's up here, not the center hole. Pulling it through and pulling it tight. So I'll keep going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Lay it down against itself, and whatever coiling cord I'm working on, I only stitch it to the coiling cord in front of it. So I am no longer working in the center. So when you're on, right, here's my eyeball, here's here's my eyeball, here's the first one. So if I'm counting out, right, so eyeball 1, I'm almost on 2, this direction. If I'm on 5, I only hook wall 5 to wall 4. If I'm on wall 4, I only hook wall 4 to wall 3. I do not always go in the center. That's the best way I can explain it, hopefully. Pull it tight, all right? Then I'm gonna go again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Lay it against my project. And whatever row I'm working on, I'm only gonna hook it to the row in front of it. So, get my tapestry needle. I'm working on this row here. I'm only gonna hook it to that row there. So I'm stabbing right through there. All right, so I'm gonna ask you to keep going until you have at least 5 walls out in each direction. So here's my eyeball. In all 4 directions, I need 5. So I have 1, I need 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's my eyeball, I have 1, 2. Here's my eyeball, I have 1, 2. Here's my eyeball, I have 1. So I need 5 going in all 4 directions. So I'm gonna continue it and I'll be right back. Okay, so I constantly get the question, what happens when I run out of a piece of yarn? Because I only got 3 arm lengths. So I have a new piece of yarn here. I'm going to fold it, okay, rub it together. I'm gonna rub the eyeball of the needle right on top of it. Get that yarn through. Whoop, that did not work for me. Rub it together. Slide the needle over it, pull it through, okay? So I have my needle on one side, and I'm starting to work on the other side. Needle, not the side I'm working on, okay? Other side. So I have my project here. I've stabbed through. Okay. What you want to do is you want to add a new piece of yarn on the part in which you're wrapping your project. So I'm going to wrap it once, and I'm going to lay that old yarn down against my project like so. I'm going to get my new piece of yarn. I'm going to lay it directly on top of it, just like I started my project, and I'm going to pick up right where I left off. So I wrapped once. I'm going to wrap number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay? So as you can see, I'm starting to cover both of those pieces of yarn, which not only locks in the other the one I just finished so that it doesn't unravel, but it's also locking down the new one, all right? So I did 7. Now I get to lay it down, stab through the row in front of it. So I'm working on row 6 right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm on row 5. So I'm only hooking row 5 to row 4, and I'm pulling it all the way through. There's a long piece of yarn, okay. And I'm pulling it tight, all right? And then I get to begin again. And eventually I'm gonna cover up those 2 pieces of yarn, those 2 tails, and it'll be locked in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, lay it down, and I get to stab it through. Okay. Now I'm going to show you how we can start building up our walls. Right, so I have the base of my project, so if I count out in either direction, I have the center of my project. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm on my 6th. Over here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Eyeball 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Eyeball 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm 5 out in each direction, except up here I'm starting 6. So what I want to do is when I'm ready, so I'm going to finish my first step. So step number 1, wrap 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Step number 2 is to lay it against my project, except instead of laying it next to it, I'm going to use my fingers and push it directly on top of it. So as you can see, it's not going to lay next to it. I'm pushing it on top. Right? So I'm starting to build up now, not out. And then it's more crucial that instead of stitching to the one in front of it, I'm stitching to the one under it. So I'm going to attach this wall to the wall underneath. Okay? So step 1 was to wrap 7 times. Step 2 was to lay it against my project, but instead of next to, I did it on top of. And then step number 3 is to do my large stitch connecting 2 walls. Okay? And then it's really important that you pull that stitch as tight as you possibly can without breaking your yarn. Okay, so I'm just pushing it against, or up on top again, and I'm pulling that stitch as tight as I can. Your project is going to look lopsided until you get your first wall in. Just FYI, don't freak out and think it's broken. So I continue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. I push it on top again because I really want to make sure that the first wall is on top. If you get lazy and you're not pushing it on top or pulling your stitches tight, your project's going to kind of flare out like a vase versus standing on top of each other making the basket. So make sure you push it on top of it, as well as you pull these double stitches as tight as you possibly can without breaking your yarn. All right, so I'm doing my double stitch. Again, I'm reinforcing and I'm pushing on top. And I'm pulling that double stitch as tight as I can and keeping that tension into my next set. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Pushing it on top, hooking the row I'm working on to the row underneath it. Pulling it very, very tightly and beginning my next set. So that's how you make your coil basket. All right, I'm also going to show you some samples. If you remember how we started our project, we had that tiny eyeball. You want to be cautious and careful not to have big gaps. If you're already starting with big gaps of your project, you're going to have holes in your basket. So please, if you're already starting to see these, we need to stop, undo it, and try again. You want it tight, consistent, and closed, okay? So there's what the inside looks like. I'm sorry, the outside looks like. There's what the inside looks like. Okay? And the walls are built straight. All right? So yes, it looked lopsided at one point, however, it is not anymore. So there is that. Here's another one. You can absolutely change the colors if you want to. It's a tiny one. This is a little 5x5. And then I have a much larger one. All right. As you can see, that's weird. Okay, as you can see, I rotated the colors as I went out. It's actually a really good example. So this green wall is only stitched to the wall in front of it. You could see that tiny stitch. It is not hooked back into the center, okay? It's gone out, and then we've gone up, and then just for style and aesthetic, there's double stitching on the black just to kind of make it look pretty. When you're ready to do a handle, instead you're going to do your normal 7, your stitch, and then instead of doing 7, just wrap it as many times as you want to visually create a nice handle, and then begin again. Do a double stitch, 7, double stitch, 7, double stitch, 7. All right, so handles are super duper easy as well. Hope you enjoy this. I hope you love making coil baskets and have fun.